Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of Westerospective, where we bring you Game of Thrones, the old seasons, and the new. I'm Geoff.
I'm Ron.
And today we are covering Season 2, Episode 7. What was it? A Man Without Honor? Is that the name of it? Okay, I remembered it. I remembered. Now, this is a Benioff and Weiss episode, so we could probably quote the entire fucking episode back to you and then just have like an hour-long read-along. Because, you know, their dialogue is that fucking good. So we managed last week to keep it under 40 minutes. So that is the goal. So we're going to get moving right along. The episode opens up. By the way, this is a retrospective on the previous seasons, knowing what we know now. So please, for the love of God, be caught up because we'll be spoiling, you know, future seasons worth of stuff. Just FYI. The episode starts out. Theon is on the look for the two Stark kids that are missing because the last episode ended with Osha being able to get them out, and most of the dialogue going back and forth in the opening part is between him and the Maester. So there wasn't really a whole lot other than basically Theon is still at the point where he's kind of having to talk himself into doing all of this shit. Like there's a part of him that wants to be doing it just because he feels like he should because of his heritage, but of his, you know, his background.
There's a part of him that's a Stark, and there's a part of him that's a Greyjoy.
Like the scene where one of the Iron Island dudes like talk shit to him and he just beats the crap out of him. Like,
yeah,
it's interesting because he's basically halfway between like a Ramsay and like a Robb. Like he's still, you know, he wants to be barbaric, but it's just not his character. You know, it doesn't come natural to him.
he's also he's a combination of those characters. I would agree, but I would agree he's like the worst half of both of those characters.
Because what's interesting is like Ramsay is a colossal shithead. But in a way, you have to admire how dedicated he is to being how crazy he is. Like, he will do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, no hesitation.
Yeah.
Theon knows better and is doing it anyway.
He's trying so hard to impress and so hard to be accepted that it even shows, like, when anything he's doing, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, brutal, if it's him being what's the word I'm looking for, kind of indecisive. It doesn't matter. Every time it shows his men, they're still laughing at him. You notice that? And he's trying so hard to turn that around.
He's trying so hard.
He's the PewDiePie of Game of Thrones.
Oh, well said. Well said. So the next scene, they go over to Snow and Ygritte while he still has her prisoner, and that's the scene where they wake up together while he's laying behind her, and their dialogue together in this episode makes this one of the funniest episodes to me, just because it is all priceless. Like they're back and forth.
Yeah, everything that Ygritte says, dude.
It's all.
I didn't realize how much I missed her.
Right? Like, I always liked her, but when you go back and you watch these episodes, and then you just see, like, you know, the impact that she has on, you know, his character, you know, building him, basically, you know, keeping him from being a stick in the mud. Like,
it's funny to go back and see just how naive Snow was, and then you don't, like you said, you don't really realize how much of his character development is due to her.
It's due to her, yeah. I 110% agree.
Yeah, and I have this funny feeling that going back and watching it again, week to week, it felt like Ygritte was in the show forever. And just like Tyrion and Bronn walking through the woods, that was like an end of an episode and the beginning of the episode, and that was it. And it felt like it was like 4 episodes when it was week to week.
Yeah.
She's going to be here and gone, I have a feeling.
Yeah, I saw the same thing. I wrote down one of the quotes that was my favorite was when they're going back and forth on her's like, you know, I'm a free woman. If you're my prisoner, you're not a free woman. That's what prisoner means.
I laughed so hard.
And then Benioff and Weiss are so fucking good. Like, they have all of this funny dialogue, but then they just kind of like hit home their point because she says to him, Oh no, he says to her, "My ancestors lived here, same as yours." And then she just says, "Then why are you fighting us?" And then he just stops fucking talking because, she has a point,
Yeah.
So much of all of their territorial claims that they go at each other in the show about are most of the time based off of bullshit. It is literally arbitrarily drawn a line through the building of the wall, and then them saying, this is our land, that's yours, even though they all came from the same heritage.
And I feel like, um, I know this is off topic, but what's funny too is Game of Thrones alum was in this episode of Doctor Who. But there's an episode of Doctor Who. It's a David Tennant episode. Three, let's see, two, three, I guess season 4, where he's on the spaceship and there's the alien people and the human people that are fighting each other, and it's just because it's been that way for generations. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
It's him, Martha, and Donna, I think. Gendry is in that episode. Um, that's the Doctor's Daughter is the name of it. It's when he gets cloned at the very beginning.
Oh yeah, I know. I didn't realize that was a continuation of it, but I know the clone episode you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the same episode. But it's him, his daughter, Martha, and Donna walking around, and basically you find out that they've only, for generations, everybody keeps saying because of the cloning, they've only been fighting for like a month or something, but it goes back generations, right? But the whole point was no one could really tell each other what the battle was over or why they were fighting each other. It's always been that way for generations.
Fighting for the sake of fighting without asking questions.
Yes, and that's exactly what a lot of the wars and battles and blood feuds and everything in Game of Thrones reminds me of, actually.
Exactly.
That's where I was going with that thing. I just feel like, it's everything is so kind of real in Game of Thrones, and it's not as much in your face. That Doctor Who episode, I thought, put that pretty eloquently. The message there at the end. That's exactly the way a lot of this is set up in Game of Thrones. It's just kind of been that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like Hatfields and the McCoys type of situation.
Yeah, pretty much.
The next scene they go to is one with Tywin and Arya, and Arya is probably,
for the love of God, Arya.
Arya is probably the worst at playing dumb ever. Like she could not advertise more that she is from a special background.
Dude, Tywin played dumb much better than she did. Because he suspected all along. There's no way he didn't, because she's so terrible at it. But when she started talking about the dragons and stuff, it pretty much cemented it in his mind.
Because
his suspicions were correct.
It's the thing too, in the it's funny because it's one of those like forest for the trees type of things, because he clearly knows something's up with her, but there's no way in hell she could possibly be a Stark because she's been serving me dinner for 3 weeks. Just one of those things. Because like I don't know, I find like their back and forth's like so fascinating, because at any point if he just started interrogating her more, he might be able to figure out where she's from. But at the same
smart
time,
enough to get it out of her.
But at the same time, it's almost like he enjoys the game of not knowing. Like he enjoys actually
he's intrigued by her.
He's surrounded by morons for the most part. He actually enjoys her company because she's more, like they literally just show with the medieval typo. She is more intelligent than everyone working underneath them, basically.
My cupbearer reads better than you do.
Exactly. I think it's cool too. They already start laying the foundation for Arya becoming a serial killer, because as she's talking with him, when he's looking out the window, they have like
staring at his neck, holding
she's staring at his neck, and then the audio fades out where she's just imagining killing him. She's slowly getting there. I think it's kind of cool. They also have some really cool stuff where they do more of the Harrenhal background, kind of like talking about this place was such a like a mammoth type of castle. They had like there were 30 hearts in the main hall. Can you believe that? And it's like this was made to withstand if 10,000 men invaded, 10,000 men would be repelled.
It's
But
basically the Game of Thrones Fort Knox.
exactly, but one dragon, and then you're fucked, basically.
Yeah.
I do like the line.
thing that I always think about with Harrenhal, I always go back to is the first time you see it. I always love that quote of it's something akin to the rocks are melted. What kind of fire melts rock? And then Arya says dragon fire. For some reason, that's anytime I think of Harrenhal, that's what I think of is the quote right there. I don't know why.
Also, right before Tywin starts talking with Arya, I made a note too. I didn't even realize that was the mountain until he said his name.
Right.
I completely forget of the actor changing.
Yeah. I'm so used to the current one that I didn't realize either until he said Clegane.
I was like, oh wait, he's talking to this fucking mountain because it's just I don't associate the mountain with that guy. I associate him with fighting the Viper. I don't.
Right.
It's just crazy. And I did like the line too. Arya has, most girls are idiots. That Tywin also appreciated because he makes the point.
He busted out laughing at that one.
One of the reasons he likes talking to her is she reminds him of how steadfast and everything that Cersei is. She's very headstrong, just like Cersei is.
Yes.
The next scene, and I don't think it's a coincidence, they go to Sansa. Sansa is actually the polar opposite. Because Sansa is actually really good at playing the game because, this whole episode, it's all about her pretending to like Joffrey.
She basically is in pure survival mode.
Yes.
She is the sheep in the middle of the wolf's den. I guess the lion's den.
I thought that was kind of a cool parallel. Again, like smart writing as far as parallels between the Stark kids, just in a different way. Because we talked last week about the parallels between all of the Stark kids.
And what's really interesting also is, and we'll get to it more later, but looking at her now versus what she becomes, and listening to some of the advice she gets later from Cersei now and where she is now in her character development in the current episodes, you can see she's taking all that advice to heart and using it. Like it's crazy how opposite she is versus now and later.
Yeah, all that little finger influence as well.
I almost feel like, because the thing that always drove me nuts about Sansa, and going back and revisiting, because kind of revisiting it versus seeing it for the first time week to week, everything feels a lot longer than it actually is. But it felt to me like Sansa was always kind of on the back burner until recently, because in the recent season, especially, her character development is just like the focus of the entire season almost. Like every episode, she becomes a little bit more of what we know now. I feel like she's stuck in the way she is here in season 2 for way too long. Because there's a point in later seasons where it come back to Sansa, I'm just kind of like,
Well, it's also one of the
bad.
things.
It was the worst part of the show for me, but there's nothing bad about the show, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
it was just the weakest part.
And it's just one of those things too. It is that way because it has to be, because she cannot develop until she is away from Joffrey. If she develops at this point, she's killed because she starts getting too mouthy, and she has to play an ignorant type, basically slave, because that's how she's going to survive.
Yeah. Even after Joffrey, I felt like she was just the naive little child for way too long, and then all of a sudden, in the course of a single season, she's like half Arya, half her mother.
Yeah. Well, I think the main reasoning behind that is all the Ramsay stuff. Like, she had it happen. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, this is happening again to me.
Yeah.
And she just got fed up with it. And then, yeah. But they cut back to a scene with her and the Hound, which is more great dialogue. One of the most unsung heroes of the show is the Hound actor.
I did not realize even how early on just how awesome he was. Like, they spend a little bit more time on him, I believe, even later this season. But even season 1 and earlier this season, I didn't appreciate him as much as I should have.
He got into character a lot quicker than a lot of the other actors. Like he really hammered it down what he wanted to.
Yeah, he knew exactly what he wanted to do going into that role.
I totally agree. They go from there to Khaleesi trying to look for Charmander and company, and she's walking around with Daxos again. Who, by the way, that actor who is Daxos, if he isn't in voice acting, he should be, because I think he has like a really cool way he's like I don't know. Is
he the necromancer dude?
No, Daxos is the dude who's with the vault, the big black dude.
Okay.
He has this weird way of speaking where he's almost like hypnotizing you as he's talking.
He would be a good Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, I think he should. If he's not in voice acting, I think he really should be, because I actually really like some of the way he like. It reminds me kind of like the way I was always super impressed with Jawkins, like inflections and the way he speaks, like in different ways. I appreciate how that guy got into character immediately.
You could hand him the phone book and it would be intriguing because of the way he speaks.
Just because of the way he talks, yeah. And he's playing her like a fiddle for this episode too.
Dude.
He is so many steps ahead of her that it's insane. But like I like the quote that he has, a man is what others say he is and nothing more.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of Benioff and Weiss throwing out one-liners that are philosophical and make you think, and like
again, Benioff and Weiss usually seem to pick a running theme, right? He's more or less talking about legacy, which is the conversation Tywin was having with Arya when she was fantasizing about killing him.
Yep.
This whole thing is legacy. Jon Snow and Ygritte. That is more or less
the backstory of talking about his ancestors. The same thing with Theon. Theon believes he has to be a Greyjoy, so he's trying to act like one, even though he's not really one. He's trying to be a Greyjoy when he was nurtured as a Stark. Like he's rejecting nurturing to go with nature, and it ends up just blowing up in his face.
Yeah, it means he's going against nature, more or less.
Let's see. They don't really have too much yet with Khaleesi, so we're going to go back to Snow and Ygritte. And again, I could literally quote the entire every scene they're in. We could quote every single thing they say to each other, but this is the first time you get.
Is this the scene where they're marching and she's marching in front of him?
One of the first scenes where they're walking together. This is the first nothing Jon Snow, and then when it happened, I was like, she said the thing.
She said the thing.
Goddamn. Rewatching it like this time, the second season, like you were saying, like you didn't fully appreciate Ygritte. Like she is one of my absolute favorite characters. I think that I didn't fully realize how much I liked her until revisiting, because like and it's different too when you rewatch these, knowing what happens between her and Snow, because it adds like a twinge of like heartbreak to everything. Like every time Hodor is on screen, I die a little inside because I automatically think of what happens later. That's
every time I hear him say Hodor, I'm just like, ugh.
It's like it used to be like kind of a funny in-joke, Hodor, and then now it just demolishes my soul and I just want to cry.
I feel like there's a lot of t-shirts that just need to be rewritten or thrown away now.
Right?
For Hodor. Hey, the kid that eventually takes out Ygritte, is his name Oliver?
I think so, because I believe he always refers to him as Ollie.
And he uses a bow and arrow to do it?
Yeah, I wonder if that was a little GRRM in joke.
I wonder if it's that, or if that's something that was changed by Benioff and Weiss.
Yeah, it very well could have been.
That just now hit me when we were talking about Ygritte. That I'm like, fucking Green Arrow takes her out.
It took Green Arrow to take down Ygritte. Let's see. They go from there to Rob hitting up on Talisa again, and then, like I said, like the twinges of heartbreak dominate this whole season to me.
Yeah,
it's rough, really. Like it really is rough revisiting these scenes, because it's just like every goddamn story has some type of like romantic tragedy behind it.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about this show? It just makes me sad.
it's really hard sitting with my wife. Well, this is her first run through of the show ever, and I'm just sitting there silently dying or suffering inside, having to like not react to anything. Yeah,
it's rough. It's rough. This was a terrible idea. I don't know why we're torturing ourselves with this.
Speaking of though, I am having to pause it a lot less to answer questions. I think she's catching on.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, I think she's catching on because there's so many names and diplomacies and everything to learn.
I still have to pause and rewind certain scenes to put on subtitles to pick up on a certain name every now and then. And I've watched this show multiple times. We do a fucking podcast over the show, and I still have to. So there's no shame in it. She is probably well more versed in it than I was at this point, because I almost quit the show during season 2.
Did you really?
They started introducing so many fucking characters where I was just like, whoa. I barely understood season 1, and now I'm having like 3 times the cast. It's like...
It's okay. They all die. The herd gets thin.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah, that scene was basically just Rob developing his relationship with Talisa. He's going with her to go pick out her medical supplies, and it's basically just the foundations for their relationship. There's not really much to say. Now, here is one of the most interesting lines of the second season to me. We cut back to Theon, and it's when he has found basically the homestead where they know the Stark kids have been. And the Maester Lewin, I believe is his name, is talking and basically saying, like, we'll go out and find them in the morning. This isn't paramount. Basically trying to like give Rickon and Bran every second they can get. And this line that Theon says was just crazy to me, because he grabs him by like the shirt, wrenches him towards him, and he says, "I'm looking at spending the rest of my life being treated like a fool and a eunuch by my own people." And when he said, I was like, whoa, they just flat out fucking tell you what's going to happen. And it is so subtle, it'll go right over your head if you don't know what they're saying, if you don't know, if you don't have hindsight. But did you pick up on that line the same?
I picked up on it. I'd never heard that line before in my life. I swear to God.
Right? It's so cool with the way you can revisit shows like this, and especially from shows that have really, really talented writers as far as laying foreshadowing for stories that have already been told in books. Because there's so much kind of like internal struggle between like a book reader watching these things, because there's actually something later that I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about in this episode that happens in the show but did not happen in the books. So like you hear stuff like that as a book reader, I would imagine, and they're like, oh wait, they just kind of put that on Front Street. Are they actually going to do that, or are they going to change it? And then if you know, like we do, that they end up doing that, you're just like, Jesus, you just flat out told the audience, like, like it's not even foreshadowing, it's just like spoiling almost, blatant 2020 spoiling. It's crazy. Benioff and Weiss like really know what they're doing. I'd be fascinated to know. We could do an entire podcast on this, podcast discussion on this film, but I'm fascinated to see what Benioff and Weiss do post Game of Thrones. Like, if they go off and do something that's their own, if they want to tackle another adaptation, like I'm really curious to see. Or maybe they go into doing movies, to have like an easier time frame of you not having as much of a crazy ass schedule. The next scene,
whatever it is, I'm sure we'll start a podcast to follow it.
Probably whatever the fuck it is, whatever it is.
Fanboys.
The next scene is Khaleesi and her boy Jorah finally comes back. Which Jorah was like, when's the last time Jorah was on the show? Like, it seems like it's been a while.
Yeah, I know. Every time he's on screen, though, dude, I don't. It's so hard to pick a favorite character in this show. He's at least in the top 3 for me, though. I fucking love Jorah.
And you want to talk about twinges of romantic tragedy? Like, this episode really hits home how much he's in love with her, and he is friend zoned so bad.
Dude, not even friend zoned at this point in the episode. I mean, later she kind of accepts it and keeps him close, but here she basically straight up shut him down.
She's angry, Char Mama, like the whole episode, and she is just pissed. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Let's see. Basically, Jorah's come back because he's heard about the dragons being kidnapped. For lack of better, dragon napped. Did I just say dragon? I don't really have anything else for that scene. It's basically just like we were talking about how she's super pissed off because the dragons are gone. All right, we go back to Snow and Egret. More fucking great dialogue between the two of them. Where basically Egret, this whole episode is giving him shit for the night. How when you think about it, the Night's Watch is so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Why anyone would purposely want to go there tells you everything you need to know about how naive Jon Snow is.
Well, really, as far as we know, he's the only one that wanted to.
Well, I'm saying like as far as the context of his specific character, why you
Right.
would want to go there shows how naive he is because it's all about, duty and honor and like being a man. And it's like
And he's the only one really that is like holding on to those values and those oaths. Because they even mention, I think they've already mentioned, I think it was Mormont that talked about people leave all the time to go out whoring or whatever and come back and stuff, and they can't
yeah.
kill them all because they wouldn't
Yeah,
have an
I
army.
remember that because he says something like along the lines of, "If I killed everyone that wouldn't grab the whore, we'd have no watchmen," or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like he's really the only one that's even taking it seriously.
And it was really cool too. Is I actually like I'm curious if they ended up refilming this scene that got onto the actual final product because or if they intentionally went back and used this previous tape because if you can actually watch, I don't think it was intentional for the character, but Kit Harington is kind of laughing. He's trying really hard not to laugh, but he's kind of, his face is breaking a little bit into smiles. I almost wonder if his character was meant to not do that, but Kit Harington couldn't help but laugh because she's so funny in that scene that they just said fuck it and they just used that scene. Because he is really breaking down throughout the whole time. Because she's hilarious in this episode. Like I don't blame him for laughing. She's hilarious. Like
yeah, she's pretty strong, and I did not remember. I remembered her being important. I did not remember her being this strong of a character.
And then she starts doing her impersonation of him, and yeah, it's all it's so adorable. But then my heart breaks because of where it leads. It's
Is this when she was threatening to tell what happened between them last night?
Yeah.
Fucking love that scene.
It's gold.
I just couldn't help myself at that point.
I love me some Egret. Then this is when she finally gets the upper hand. She gets him basically surrounded by like 50 dudes, and he is super fucked.
Yep.
So, yeah, we will check in.
He even just kind of stands there like, almost like Charlie Brown, just.
Let's see.
Johnny
Next
Brown.
the next one they go to is an important Sansa scene because this is when she first gets her first period.
Yes.
And like I didn't really appreciate her acting is actually really good in that scene, how just terrified she is by the thought of what is happening to her and like the implications of it.
And I remember loving Shay for what she does when the other handmaiden's like running out of the room and she puts the knife to her throat. But I can't help but see Shay without going, God damn it, Shay.
See, here's the thing too. I made a note of this. I think it's interesting revisiting this because I specifically think the stuff with Shay is interesting because they never explicitly say, but I've always been curious at what point she decides to screw over Tyrion. Because in that scene, you can kind of take it like a couple different ways. She genuinely likes Sansa. She's going out of her way to help Sansa, regardless of the fact that by helping Sansa, she is helping Tyrion because Tyrion genuinely cares about what happens to Sansa, and he doesn't want her to be treated badly.
Mm-hmm.
Or has she not turned on Tyrion yet? It's interesting.
My personal take on it, knowing what she's doing, is that she is always pretty much on Tywin's side the entire time.
So is that
from the get-go?
See, I don't know
But I think that she genuinely likes Sansa just based on the previous scenes where they're also, and then some
You
of them
get
that come after.
you get what I'm saying though? It's like it's kind of brilliantly written, the fact that you don't know. Like,
It,
there is no clear cut point
right.
in which she betrays him.
My take on it has always been kind of she's fucking Tyrion over, and Sansa helping Sansa in the ways that she does kind of makes up for it in her mind a bit. You know, like she's taking a liking to Sansa, and she's helping Sansa the way she should be trying to help Tyrion. You
It's
know what I
just
mean?
it's just fascinating to me because you genuinely don't know and never will,
Yeah.
because I'm pretty sure her story is even different from like the way it is in the book. So even if the book has a clear and concise point of origin for her betrayal, doesn't necessarily translate to the show. So they could
Right.
be two totally different. They could be two totally different moments when she decides to betray him, or if she has been betraying him the whole time. You don't know.
Yeah.
It's a cool.
My take is she's been manipulating him the whole time.
I think you can take it that way, and you could be right, but there's no way to know for sure. And I find that interesting about her character.
Now it's done really well, and the actress portrays that very well because she doesn't give it away either.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, we got to speed these up a little bit because I do want to get this under 40 minutes. That is the goal. All right.
Never happens, Geoff.
We did it last week. We're going for two in a row.
Last week we said 35.
Well, it was under 40, so I'm changing my expectations. So fuck you. All right. The next scene is with Sansa and Cersei, and this is a really interesting parallel to kind of like the legacy topic we mentioned earlier about how that cross between different points of each character, all the characters throughout the episode, because the way that this conversation develops is basically Cersei talking to Sansa about how your legacy is your children. It doesn't matter if you love your husband because you're going to love your children, and they're your legacy. That's all that matters. That's all you can kind of ask for in life.
Yes.
Because she straight up tells her, because Cersei or Sansa is saying all the right things. She's saying, "But I do love Joffrey." She's lying, and Cersei knows that she's lying, but she respects her for being, for playing the game the way she's supposed to be playing it. But she knows she's bullshitting, and then she decides to just straight up tell her, like, "You'll never find that kind of devotion that I have with Jaime." That she says it in a different context, not romantically, but in that conversation with Sansa, she talks about it, like platonically as her brother. You will never have that kind of devotion with Joffrey, because Cersei knows that Joffrey's a monster. She knows the horrible situation that Sansa is in, and she's almost basically kind of giving her an out.
She almost in a way admires her a little bit.
And she feels empathy for her because she was in a similar situation with Robert. She didn't love Robert, she loved her children.
Well, she did at first.
Yeah, he
ruined that on their wedding night.
Yeah.
But this is also the scene that I was talking about that is very important for part of Sansa's development later. Because this is where she talks to her about how basically trust no one and love no one but your children. Because you'll just wind up doing stupid things and getting yourself hurt trying to help out other people. Think of no one but yourself, more or less. Look at her in the most recent season. That's exactly the way she acts.
It's also a really important line for Cersei as well, because when she straight up tells Sansa, "Love no one but your children," and then in the current season with Cersei not having kids anymore, she is completely fucking unhinged now.
She's completely unhinged. She's a totally different person.
I am terrified to see what they do with her character.
I guess she's not a completely different person. She is showing her true self now.
And she has nothing gripping her in reality. There's
nothing to hold her back.
She has no attachment even to Jaime, because Jaime being with Myrcella when she died, I think she even loses attachment with him now because he couldn't save her. So he's almost like he's still alive, but he's kind of dead to her now. She has zero attachment to anybody, which is not good news. And I am terrified of her going forward. Even more so, even knowing and seeing what happens with the bomb in the most recent season finale, I think the worst is still yet to come with their character.
Oh yeah. I cannot wait to get back to that scene though.
Yeah, right. Okay, now the next scene, you want to talk about how differently a scene can be represented based on what you know, but the scene where Jaime kills his cousin in the prison cell thing, because if you're just watching it for the first time and he's inching closer as the conversation is developing, you take it in a totally different context, because if you know that he's about to die, good God, is it nerve-wracking, because you are like on the edge of your seat watching him inch closer and closer and closer and closer. The directing,
I had forgotten about this scene.
Great. Oh, you had? See, this is interesting. Earlier I mentioned about how there was differences between the books and the show. Yeah. I believe, now I could be wrong, but I believe Jaime doesn't kill his cousin in the book. This was made up for the show. When this happened in the show, book readers flipped their shit, because the whole point of Jaime is that you start to later on kind of feel for him, and then people were freaking out where it's like, well, how am I ever supposed to feel for him if he killed his own fucking cousin? You know, like they portray him more cold than he is.
Yeah, I mean, to brutally beat him to death after the heartwarming conversations that they just had.
See, that's interesting too. Is my next note is that this scene is a microcosm of the entire show. In any other show, this scene would play out in about 15 to 30 seconds. He would kill his cousin just to advance the plot. No, Game of Thrones gives that side character an unnecessarily long 5-minute monologue almost to develop his character, just to have him brutally be killed by a relative. That tells you all you need to know about what show you're watching. Like, that's just interesting to me. There's some great dialogue in there too. Like, I like when he's talking about how Jaime was a squire for Sir Barristan, and he says he was a painter who only used red. Like, I love that line. Killer line.
Yeah.
And then you want to talk about, like, I don't know if it was a directing choice or what, but after he's killed him and the cousin is dying, do you remember seeing him fucking twitching on the ground? It is so unsettling. Like, that actor crushed it.
I was say he just crushed it like his skull was.
Like, it was
so good.
It made me physically uncomfortable watching that twitch. It was very disturbing.
Yeah, it was done very well.
All right, from there, did you have anything else you wanted to add with the Jaime scene?
No, not really.
Okay.
Not yet. We'll have more on Jaime in later episodes.
All right, the next one, they go to the next scene, is Jorah with the masked woman, who I probably would need to read the books to have a better understanding of her, because I don't believe they ever actually diverge that much information to the audience about her.
I don't think they do either. I did love how, Jorah just immediately ran out of the scene last time when she said, "Find my dragons." He just immediately turned on his heels and went. And then the next time you see him, he's like in full armor.
Right.
Walking around with a hand on his sword in full armor.
I just wanted to make a quick note that Ian Glenn, the Jorah actor, is very good at the thing you and I constantly preach about, acting without saying anything. Like,
he says everything without saying anything.
He is fantastic at that. Like,
I love him.
Even on this show where everyone's great, like, he is especially good at that.
When he was a villain on Strike Back,
I need to watch that show. I've heard nothing but awesome things about Strike Back.
If nothing else, those episodes with him in it. Dude, yeah. I love Ian Glenn. I want him in more stuff.
I agree. Let's run down the rest of these really quickly. The Warlock assassination of the 13 is pretty metal. Like, you don't usually, like, it's funny because they have dragons in Game of Thrones, but they don't usually get that blatantly mystical about stuff. So when they do crazy shit like that, it stands out.
Like him just Obi-Wan Kenobiing out of being stabbed in the back.
Yeah, that whole sequence is directed very, very well.
What's crazy too is if you really want to appreciate that actor, watch him in Game of Thrones and watch him in Doctor Who. Tooth and Claw, I believe, is the name of the episode. It's a David Tennant.
Yeah, with the Brotherhood of Priests or whatever.
Yeah, it's a complete like mockery of Bruce Lee like movies and stuff. He's like the head monk.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny yet so well done. and he's so good in it. And then in Game of Thrones, he's just downright sinister.
Oh, he's yeah. He needs to be in more stuff as well. That actor does.
Yes.
From here we go to Kat and Brienne. Basically, this is when they have the Karstarks are pissed off at Jaime. They want to kill him, the dad specifically, because the guard who Jaime killed after killing his cousin was the Karstark son. This comes into play much more later that we will talk about in future episodes later on in this season and next
strong
season.
female leads in movies and TV. No one does it better than Game of Thrones.
Absolutely.
Even the more traditional female characters in the show for the era that this is supposed to be taking place in is anything but traditional.
Also, a lot of credit.
Lady Stark got between a prisoner and a lord whose son was just killed that has his sword already out, and she talked him down.
And she's so smart that she makes a point of the dude who is the prisoner paralyzed her baby boy.
Yeah.
And she is still strong-headed and, tactical enough to realize he's more important to them alive, much more important alive than dead.
Yeah.
And also, George R.R. Martin deserves a lot of credit for that, too, because he's been writing these books since the 90s. It was pretty revolutionary having this many strong female leads in the 90s for your book series. He deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. I just always loved how, we'll get to more later, like Marjorie and several other characters. Even though the more traditional like characters are anything but traditional,
that's what makes the show so good. That's what makes it. It's just the 20th most interesting character on Game of Thrones is more interesting than almost any other character's lead character.
Yeah.
From there, they go to the scene with Cersei and Tyrion. The acting is very beautiful in this. I really, really like the moment too where Tyrion has a moment where he's genuinely trying to comfort her, but they have no relationship. So he's just slowly, awkwardly getting closer to her, trying to comfort her, but he has no idea how because they don't like each other. They have never liked each other.
Yeah.
The acting is just wonderful. Watching his face because he's walking closer to her, he's looking away. He can't even make eye contact with her, let alone give her a hug.
This scene is so well acted, so well written, and so well filmed that even if this is the only episode you've ever seen, you get everything you need to know about those two characters in that one scene.
Beautifully, it's masterfully done.
You might not understand, but you know everything you need to know about those two characters in that one scene. It is very well done, even down to the cinematography. It's just incredible, that whole scene.
Fantastic scene. Let's see. And then they go back to where it looks like Kat's about to kill Jaime, but she's not. They have a really, really cool conversation with Jaime, basically, where he's I like the conversation that he talks about the vows, where he's talking about, I have a vow.
They all
to protect
contradict
the king.
each other.
The king's mad. I have a vow to my father. My father hates the king. When the vows start contradicting each other, am I bad for being a kingslayer for killing a mad king? Jaime got a bad rap on that one. You have to kind of feel for him on that one.
Yeah, Jaime. One of the things that's interesting also is how much honor and your vows and your oaths and stuff mean to everyone. It is reflected in the fact that everyone agrees the Mad King needed to die, and the guy that did it they hate because he was sworn to the king. Does that make what right mind does that make?
He was literally damned if he did and damned if he didn't.
He basically saved everybody and everything, and there's not a lot of people who would say differently, but he had an oath to that person whether he was mad or not. It's
interesting too that one of the characters who he has the most important on-screen relationships with is Brienne. Who could not be more honor-bound. The most honor-bound character on the show probably is Brienne. So
probably past Eddard, and he is so cynical about the vows and the oaths and stuff. Their dynamic is pretty good. But dude, I just love the entire conversation he's having with Catelyn. Is that a woman?
I
Like,
literally
where do you
wrote
find
down.
such a beast? And,
Is
like,
that, I literally wrote down, is that a woman? Like the way he delivers those lines is just magical.
Oh,
And then
man.
the scene ends where you think she's gonna kill him, but we know she doesn't
He's cutting him
because.
loose.
And that's the end of that scene. And then it ends with Theon strapping up the two kids that he's killed in order to masquerade them as the Stark kids.
Yeah. You want to talk about
It's-
people getting a bad rap, dude? The fucking farmers. That's the farmers' boys. They didn't even know, most likely, that Bran and Rickon came through.
It's
And
just ultimate wrong place at the wrong time. And like it's one of those
Yeah.
things too. It's one of those things too, like I was talking earlier about how like Theon wants so badly to be barbaric. This is like the ultimate half measure.
yeah,
He unnecessarily had these other kids killed just to parade them when, you know, it's just one of those things. He's half-assing being a brute, like,
yeah.
if that makes any sense at all. And that's a wrap for the show. We did not get under 40 minutes. I will blame Ron. But in our defense, there's a lot to talk about in this episode.
there was a lot. It was a Benioff and Weiss episode. Every
Yeah.
scene was important. Honestly, I'm not as big a stickler on the time as you are. If there's something worth talking about, if we're just unnecessarily dragging it out, then you know.
So
But if
we'll
there's
give us
stuff to talk about,
we'll give us a little bit more time to talk about Benioff and Weiss episodes. Basically, we'll have like a little.
Benny Weiss.
Yeah, we'll have a little extra time for that. But yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we did not touch on?
Just what a place to leave the audience hanging at the end of the episode. No pun intended.
Now, did you ever think the Stark kids were dead? Because I did not the first time I watched it.
I wasn't sure, but I was still fairly certain that was not the
Yeah,
Stark.
I like to me personally, the first time watching it, like the Catelyn thing was a little bit more of a cliffhanger than like the Stark kids thing. So I never thought for a second he killed them.
Yeah,
That he killed the Stark kids, I should say.
You've had me on record several times on this particular show with this, but it was never a cliffhanger for me on Catelyn because Game of Thrones does not shy away from brutal deaths. So to cut away when she gets the sword out, you know,
Yeah.
kind of like back to my Stannis thing when I was like, no, he's still alive.
Yeah, that's
Is it
fucked you
cutaway?
a couple times.
Yeah. Just Stannis, I think.
Tywin, you swore up and down Tywin was alive when Tywin was no longer alive.
I don't remember.
Yeah, you did. we have evidence. We have evidence somewhere out in the cosmos. But yeah, if you would like to check us out more, please like and subscribe. In addition to the Game of Thrones show, we also do a weekly news vodcast where we cover the latest in movies, TV shows, and occasionally gaming. We have social media links in the description below for Facebook and Twitter. And most importantly, if you know anyone else that might also like our content, we would greatly appreciate the share. I'm Geoff.
I am Ron.
For this night and all the nights to come, I totally fucked up the ending, so we'll just say
I
goodbye.
know. I just went with it when you said that.
Yeah. It's midnight. I've been up since like 7:30 this morning, and I'm just
all
done.
you've done is right today.
I'm just fucking done. I'm just done. Bye, guys.